Hello and welcome back. My name is Crystal Sage, and this space is devoted to understanding and interrupting repeating relational patterns. And if you've ever experienced a relationship that felt incredibly intense, magnetic, or almost impossible to ignore, you may have heard someone describe that connection as a karmic relationship. Today, I want to explore what people often mean when they use the phrase and why these kind of relationships can feel so powerful. But more importantly, we're going to look at what might actually be happening beneath the surface of those experiences. Before we begin, let's take a brief moment. Let's ground together. If it feels comfortable, take a slow breath in through your nose and gently exhale through your mouth. Allow your shoulders to soften and allow your body to settle wherever you are right now. You don't need to change anything or force anything. Simply notice your breath for a moment. When you're ready, we can begin. The phrase karmic relationship is used in many different ways. Now, some people use it in a spiritual sense, suggesting that two people are connected through unfinished lessons or past experiences. Others use the phrase to describe relationships that feel incredibly intense, emotional or emotionally consuming, or life-changing. And many people use the term when a relationship feels both deeply meaningful, challenging, all at the same time. And it can feel like the relationship entered your life for a reason. And it can also feel confusing, overwhelming, or difficult to navigate. And in many cases, the term karmic relationship becomes a way of trying to explain an experience that feels emotionally powerful but difficult to understand. And when people describe karmic relationships, they often talk about a few common experiences. The connection may feel immediate and powerful. You may feel deeply understood by the other person in ways that seem rare or unexpected. And at the same time, the relationship may also include cycles of tension, conflict, distance, and reconnection. There may be moments where everything feels aligned, everything may feel really meaningful, and then moments where the relationship suddenly feels confusing or emotionally activating. And this combination of intense connection and intense activation can create a powerful emotional experience. And that experience can make the relationship feel extremely significant. One way to understand these experiences is through the lens of the nervous system. Human relationships are not only emotional experience, they are also physiological experience. Allow me to explain. See, our bodies respond to closeness, distance, safety, and conflict in very real ways. So when two people interact repeatedly over time, patterns begin to form between their nervous systems. Certain conversations may trigger emotional responses. Certain behaviors may create feelings of comfort, anxiety, excitement, or fear. And over time, those patterns can become familiar to the nervous system. Even if the pattern includes tension or instability, The familiarity itself can create a strong pull towards the relationship. Now, one reason relationships described as karmic feel so magnetic is because they often involve emotional highs and emotional lows. Moments of closeness can feel incredibly meaningful. Moments of conflict can feel deeply painful. And when these experiences repeat in cycles, the nervous system can become conditioned to that pattern. It begins to expect the cycle: closeness, tension, conflict, reconnection, hope. Then that cycle begins again. And over time, this can create a powerful emotional rhythm that feels almost impossible to ignore. Not because a relationship is necessarily healthy, but because the nervous system has become deeply engaged in the pattern. One important thing to understand is that recognizing relational patterns does not mean dismissing the emotional significance of a relationship. Many relationships bring important insight, growth, and learning. However, it can be helpful to distinguish between meaning and pattern. And relationships may feel meaningful, but that does not mean every pattern within that relationship is supportive or sustainable. And when people begin to observe the relational cycles that appear repeatedly, sometimes interesting often happens. Confusion happens, and it begins to shift into clarity. And clarity creates the possibility for different choices. If this topic resonates with you, you might gently ask yourself a few questions. Have I experienced relationships that felt incredibly intense very quickly? Do certain emotional cycles appear repeatedly in my relationships? What happens in my body when conflict or tension appears in close relationships? Do I notice patterns of closeness followed by emotional distance or activation? These questions are not about blame. They are simply about awareness. And awareness is often the first step towards interrupting patterns that no longer serve us. In relational pattern work, the goal is not to label relationships as good or bad. The goal is to begin observing what is actually happening. And when people start noticing their emotional responses, nervous system reactions, and relational cycles, something powerful begins to shift. And instead of reacting automatically, space begins to appear between the trigger and the response. And within the space, new possibilities begin to emerge. If you're interested in exploring relational patterns more deeply, the Relational Pattern Breakthrough Program guides individuals and partners through a structured 6-month process of awareness, nervous system regulation, and pattern interruption. If that feels relevant to you, you can find the application link in the video description. I want to thank you for spending this time here. These conversations are not about blaming ourselves or others. They are about learning to observe the relational patterns that shape our lives with calm awareness. And as awareness grows, new possibilities for clarity and connection begin to emerge. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in our next conversation. Bye-bye.